Okay, thanks everyone for joining Product Council today. The focus today is the dispute management workstream, which is led by Promesse, who is here today, and he's going to present on the progress so far, what else he and the workstream as a whole hopes to achieve by the end of this PI, and also areas where he needs support, I hope. So, Promesse, I think I'll just hand over to you directly, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, it's good to be here. Good to be here. And then, yeah, as mentioned, that you're going to actually go through the what we have achieved so far, what we have right now so far as dispute management work lead, and then where we want to be at the end of this PI, and then also the future goals and vision of this specific work stream. Allow me to share my screen. Am I okay? Now I can see.
Can't see your screen
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah, I'm going to share it. To share the whole screen. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Got it. Yeah, perfect. Thanks so
Okay,
much.
thank you very much. So in few words, the goal that we have today and what we have done, first of all, dispute management has so many parts, if I can say, and we have so many levels. So the goal and what we have actually managed to decide is actually where are we going to start. So Mojaloop can be used as a switch, like we use it here, maybe in Rwanda and other countries. It can be used locally and also can be used as a cross-border, which means at a certain moment, there's a time that is going to come where a transaction we go through more than two participants, not only the sender and the receiver, sometimes even the corresponding participants and so on. But currently, what you're going to explain here and the structure that you're going to start implementation as phase one or the first scenario is actually when this transaction is only involved, like only two participants are involved in that transaction, which means the sender and the receiver. So that's the first scenario. There will be time where we're going to be integrated by Swift using maybe ISO 222 in all these, having corresponding banks part of the whole process. But now the first implementation that we want to do on the module is actually specifically on when have two participants participating in transaction. So I will, before I even go to the next steps, I just want to go through very quickly and briefly in the current implementation and structure. I will not read word by word. I'll be just going high level, and I'm sure I've shared a draft, and I will share also the updated draft because I've received the feedback, and then I will share it after this call. So the first scenario that we have is actually when we have, first of all, the initiation. So I'm going to explain actually three levels of disputes. So there's when an initiator, what you call an initiator, initiates a dispute. There's what you call, there's what you call, there's what you call the scheme manager level when it has been escalated to the scheme manager. And we have also taken into consideration another level after the scheme manager that can be used after the scheme manager as the regulator or another superior committee in different markets that can be used as the resolver of the problem that has not been managed by the scheme manager. So I'm going to go through all this through these high level processes, and then we are going to have comments and feedback, but this is what we have done so far. So the initiator, without just reading block by block, the initiator will actually be initiating uh, initiating a dispute. So which means we have made that there's a possibility of, let's see, there's a possibility of an initiator having what we call a maker checker internally. And then there's also another possibility of not having it. So this is one of the things that actually are not mandatory. They are like optional. So the initiator initiates a dispute. After initiating a dispute, if they want it, they can have some approval in-house in in their department to review the dispute initiated and then maybe approve. Or they cannot have it. It's all about them. And then after approving the after having this initiated, the person who is going to receive it is actually the respondent. As you remember, I have mentioned that in this scenario, we only have two participants, which means that if we initiate a dispute that is linked to a transaction, the dispute is going to automatically be assigned to the other party that is involved in the dispute. And then the other party receives the dispute. They review the dispute depending on the facts that has been provided. It can be a chat where they can exchange. It can be where they can upload files like proofs, statements, and everything. And then after reviewing all those things, and then they can make a decision. They can either decline. It's like, okay, your claim is not valid to us, or it's valid. And then when it happens like that, we notify both the initiator, the person who initiated the dispute, and of course the scheme manager is also notified about the solution. So in this case, the scheme manager has like the visibility on what's happening, but they cannot do anything until the escalation. And then depending on the decision that has been made, it's up now to the initiator to see, okay, according to the response, to the proofs that they have provided and everything, is the response valid to me? It can be valid. Yes, like, okay, now I have gotten my answer. Now let me close the dispute. Or I'm not really happy about the answers. Let me escalate to the hub or the scheme manager. So that is the process that can happen. So which means here there was an initiation part, there was the part of responding to the dispute, and then after that, it's up to the DFSP now to say, okay, now let me actually close it or not. That is the part that is there. So on the DFSP side and the initiator and the respondent. So this is the first scenario. So the second scenario is when the DFSP initiator, the initiating party, decides now to say, okay, no, we're not happy about the answer. Let us now escalate the to the to the other party, to the scheme manager, which is this one. So a de-escalation part is done in this way. So first of all, this
Hi.
option to yes, please.
I'd like to.
Yes, Paul.
Okay, cool.
Oh, did you have a
Okay.
question? Did you want to raise something? No. Okay, carry on, Promesse.
Okay. Thank you. So this part now is actually the one of when the escalation has happened to the side of the scheme, which means the initiator is not happy with the response given. So there are different things here. So there's initiator initiating, and then the scheme manager, of course, they receive that there's an escalation that has happened and everything, and then they can actually review I mean, they can review the dispute, all the proofs exchanged, documents exchanged, everything that has been done, and then the decision process. So the decision process is actually, if you want to, we have maybe decision categories if they're there. I've made a table. There's a table that is in the document that maybe I will show it after this to show mandatory and maybe optional steps because markets are different, industries are different. They might need to say, okay, we don't need this or we need it. Some of these steps are mandatory, others are optional, but everything is mentioned in the document. I'll be highlighting everything that is mandatory or that is maybe that is maybe option. So we have this decision process. So people might decide to have it in different ways, but in any case, there's an initiation of closing the escalation, saying, okay, now we are going to take a decision. If they have decision categories, they can provide it. This is not mandatory. To provide additional comments, we need to know exactly what is backing that decision. If it's a minute of the meeting that happened, we need that, everything. And then now, here we have now put another step to inform the system to know, okay, are you on which side? So if they choose approve, then it means they are on the side of the initiator because the initiator maybe wanted that the dispute be approved and then it has been declined before. So if the scheme manager is going to take a decision, they will say, okay, are you approving or you are declining? So it's like the same dispute. Now the respondent party is no longer the one responding, but now the scheme manager. They also have the option to say, okay, are we approving what the initiator says, or are we declining his claim? And then they confirm the decision. So this will have also an impact on actually on disputes that maybe really request the return of money and everything. But then if on this side, when the decision is made, both respondent and initiator, they will see actually they will see the response, they will review it, and then they will have an option to say, okay, we are satisfied. If both are satisfied, then the case is closed. If one of them is not satisfied, then they will have now an option to escalate to another superior committee. Now, this is in case the industry, depending on which one has adopted our system, allows the superior committee or if it's up to the scheme manager. If it's up to the scheme manager, then this process of marking is as satisfied is not there. But if we have another option of having a superior committee like the regulator or something like that, this option will be there, which means this will be on both sides. You remember on the first structure, only the initiator was allowed to escalate because he's the one who initiated. But at this time now, because everyone has provided his own stance, they can all now be able to escalate, both the initiator and the respondent. The respondent can also say, you know, what the scheme manager has said, I don't agree with him. Then let's actually escalate to the superior committee. So that is also another option. And this is actually adopted to how actually the here in Rwanda is actually done. And most of the industries I've seen that in the research that I've done is that they have they have the scheme manager, but they also have another superior committee. It can be the regulator, it can be another committee set aside to actually work on these issues that has not been resolved between participants and the scheme manager. So this is how actually it is going to be done. But then on the settlement part, I wanted to talk about it when I'm here, actually, is that on the settlement part, we have actually had some discussions with the members of the community on this one. We said the settlement is not going to be done by the scheme manager or something like that. We need to have, as Mojaloop is built, we need to have a way if both parts agrees, okay, this we are all satisfied, and then this dispute requires actually the return of funds, the system will inform the receiving party to return the money. And then, of course, from this part, the receiving participant will actually initiate a transaction that relates to the one being disputed. And then, of course, this transaction that is going to be initiated here as a reversal or a return of money will also be settled along with other transactions after the settlement cycle. So this is how the settlement part is going to be done on all sides. Even on the first side, if the respondent agrees, and then they say, okay, we approve, and then the dispute requires actually to return the funds, then the process will be the same. The system will actually inform the receiving party, you know what, you need to return the funds, and then the receiving party will return the funds, and then we'll be able to see in the system this has been returned, and we can have actually the reference code of that particular transaction that has happened in return of money. So this is actually on the level of the scheme, but I will talk more about the challenge that we will work on, or we have even faced locally here on the part of returning money. The last step is even easier, is for the regulator, or the last step of taking a decision. So the process is the same. Anyone can on both the initiator and the respondent can actually do escalate, and then the process is the same. And then when the regulator, or the last step, so here it's also optional, and it can depend on an industry. Depending on the last step or the last level of dispute, the decision made is actually going to be the last one. No one will have an option to escalate or something like this. No, the decision that will be made by the regulator or the scheme manager, depending on the last on the industry, will be executed. And if it requests the return of money, then the process will be the same. It's just to inform the receiving party, and then they return the funds. So this is how actually the process is going to be. One of the things that I wanted to mention in this presentation is that there are other processes or configurable services that we have in the system that will be set. For example, I think I can share them with you. Let me share this. Let me share that document too in the presentation. 1 minute so that I can find it. Hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it. Yep.
So there's these configurations that you're seeing here, but I wanted to mention also. So there's what we call auto closure, because when we're doing disputes, actually, especially when we're doing instant payment, it needs to be really as soon as possible. We cannot allow disputes to go days, weeks, months without being closed. We need to have it really soon. So this auto closure will be set. It will be set. Again, it will not be mandatory. It will depend, of course, on the market that we are working on. But this auto closure will work in this way. It's like in court when when the judge tells you, okay, this is the decision I have taken, they give you some days to appeal. It's like maybe 30 days to appeal. If those days are not there, the decision made in court will be executed and they won't be able to appeal after. So this auto closure will work the same way. It's like, okay, maybe the scheme manager or the respondent has actually approved or declined. If the initiator or the involved parties don't react on that, they either say we are satisfied or we are not satisfied and escalate. After certain days that are set, it will be closed automatically. Yes, Paul?
Um, I very much like these configurations, and I'm really grateful you've put some thinking into it. It's very helpful. The only question I have is around the auto closure. So effectively, a miscreant participant could effectively just refuse to respond to disputes and never have to worry about refunding the payer at all. Is that not true?
Yeah, yes. Actually,
But
it
but it's
mhm,
actually if the DFSP doesn't respond rather than the payee, of course.
mhm,
So it's
yes,
about a miscreant, this DFSP. I'm wondering
yes.
if there's a way of escalating this still further so the regulator can say, you know, this DFSP needs to be kicked out of the scheme, almost.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, actually, what you said, I actually thought about it. So there's what you call auto closure and auto escalation. Let's
Yeah.
say, let's say a DFSP, and one DFSP initiates a dispute, and the respondent party don't want to actually respond on it because maybe it involves them returning the money or something like that. There's what we call auto escalation that is also set in the system that can say, okay, if the respondent doesn't respond in these days, the system will automatically auto escalate the issue to the scheme. And then now the scheme manager will be the one to actually work on this. And then they will review the dispute of the initiator and then see, okay, is it good or not good? If depending on the action that they will take, now the system will do the same. Actually, this auto closure works on when, let's say, the respondent party has actually agreed, okay, we approve or we decline.
Mhm.
So the system needs to close this. The system needs actually to close. This dispute needs to be closed, and then we have a dispute hanging there. Maybe the respondent has declined or approved it, and then the initiator is doing nothing about it. So that's where the auto closure comes in. If maybe you have gotten the response either from the respondent, either from the scheme manager or regulator, and you don't do anything about it, escalate or close, the system after some set days will close itself and then execute the taken decision by the above parties. So that's how actually we have thought about it. And this auto escalation works in favor of the initiator. In case the respondent is not responding to you, after some set days, the system will auto escalate the issue to scheme manager, and the scheme manager will actually be the one to work on that issue. Check it and verify if it's if it's valid, they will approve or decline it accordingly. So that's how actually we have I've thought about it, and then yeah, you can let me know if there are some
Yeah, that
gaps in
makes
that.
that makes sense. That makes sense. I think
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just think it needs maybe noting down what you've just said would be helpful. Yes.
yes, yeah, sure,
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
Okay.
I will definitely note it down.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then there's notifications that we can set maybe in Mojaloop that maybe you see when we someone has been assigned to a dispute too, and then maybe the auto escalation day is actually approaching. We can maybe help them to be like making it dynamic. I've actually mentioned it to make it optional and to make it dynamic so that a user, any participant can say, okay, please remind me before a day, before 12 hours, something like that, so that it can be helpful to them. So same thing with the dispute settlement and fees and charges. So in some markets on a dispute, they don't actually charge or even take fees, things like that. Others, they do. So all these were actually some extra configurations that I've said, okay, this we can have in the system, and then the people or the participants or other people who actually adopt our system can choose if they can actually use them or not use them. So actually, this was actually the whole level system. I will share the document with you to see all these explanations, and you can see if it's a must-have, what will who will do it, if it's going to be done automatically by the switch or manually, things like that. Everything is part of the system, but I can give you maybe the time to actually comment on the structure. This is the first phase, as I have mentioned, because in the near future, we have disputes where we have so many parties involved in the system, so many parties involved in the system. So that will all be the case. So this is the first phase, the first scenario that we are going to implement. So before I go into the next steps that I think we can take, I think I can give you the floor to ask questions and suggestions. Yes.
Thanks, Promesse. Does anyone have any questions on this, or are we content with this?
Yes,
Paul,
Paul.
Hi. I like what's there, but I I must say, when I've thought about dispute management, I've gone through a debate in my head, and I would like to voice that here now. Just the debate I've had, um, just so that we all maybe understand it from another perspective, and then we can uh, just check that we've made the right decisions here, which I think you have actually. But just bear with me. So because transactions in Mojaloop are end to end, it means that in fact the DFSPs are agreeing to terms during the transaction. And in fact, the scheme's there just to make sure that that agreement is in fact fulfilled and meets according to what's happened. So it then manages the settlement agent to make sure that the settlement agent then moves across the funds. So the scheme itself doesn't even have the settlement agent. You know, there's an independent agent that's moving funds between the DFSPs to make sure that the funds get settled. Um, so so in fact, the scheme isn't directly involved in the agreement to begin with, and now there's a dispute. So, what role does the scheme play in this? And the way you've set it up here is, let's try and think of it in terms of legal terms. They're effectively brokering the communication. I mean, let's be honest, if the agreement's between the two DFSPs, they don't actually have to get involved. They could just give them contact information. But I mean, this might be going between organizations in other countries, which might be quite difficult to get hold of it. So it's convenient to have the scheme maybe broker that communication or that place in the dispute. But because they're there to actually help make a decision on it, they're effectively taking a bigger role than just that. They're not just brokering the communication. They're actually trying to make a decision on what they deem is right, and they weren't actually initially involved in the agreement because that was between the two DFSPs. I guess what I'm trying to say is the way that this dispute process falls in line with sort of other scheme and other processes and what the industry is used to and expects. But Mojaloop is a little different because the agreement is in fact with the end participant. And so what role do they have a right over? And maybe because each participant agrees to rules in the scheme and they're members of the scheme, they can also agree to the scheme maybe deciding over the dispute resolution. So there is a place for it there, but it's not it's not an obvious given. But I think maybe has anyone else in the community also had this sort of debate and come to the
Indeed,
conclusion that
Paul.
this is
Indeed, Paul. Yeah,
the right approach or the right balance?
yeah. I think that what you're saying is something that has been raised on a number of occasions. And my personal view is that what Promesse has presented today is a very good first pass, and but it is quite general. And we need to deal with the fact that in many cases, because of, as you said, agreement of terms, etc., many disputes can be just immediately auto-resolved as they're covered by the agreement of terms. And in fact, the majority of disputes that we would actually have to deal with is payer and payee DFSP actually acting on behalf of outside the payment scheme disputes, essentially between those DFSPs and their customers. And all we are doing is effectively providing a forum in which they can resolve their disputes between themselves. Because of agreement of terms, there is actually nothing that the scheme itself, the hub itself, should get involved in, except in extreme cases.
So that decision process is put under the scheme hub manager.
Yeah.
That might just be a communication between the two, and where they then come to a decision.
Yeah, I think that may well be the case. It's whether you actually separate out the role of hosting the dispute management system from the role of operating the hub.
Yes, yeah.
Because as you so eloquently put it, Paul, there are very few occasions where a transaction that has been successful and has been subject to agreement of terms would in any way be subject to a dispute where the hub would be involved as actually an active participant in the dispute, as opposed to a passive facilitator.
Yeah. So,
It-
what type of disputes do we need to cover here? And I think the main one is, let's say the payee DFSP said they were going to hand over the money, and then for whatever reason didn't. That would involve a dispute.
That my personal view, and I want Promesse to come in on this, is that the majority of the disputes will be a failure of the DFSP systems at one end or the other in terms of their relationship with their customer, which is affecting the overall transaction.
Yes. Yeah, if I can even support him here.
Please do.
One of the biggest actually, like our statistics shows us that maybe a huge number of disputes that we have sometimes is actually linked to what we call, okay, we call it fraud, but it's not really fraud. When I want to send money, let's say to Paul Baker, and I mistakenly send it to Paul Akin, and then this, of course, there's no problem. The transaction will go through, and then after that, I will call the participant, the bank, or the mobile money operator, and say, okay, I actually made a mistake. How can I actually get my money back? And then they register a dispute. If maybe in that case they register a dispute, go to the other side, they hold the money from the receiver if it's there, or if it's not there, they say, okay, how can we return this money? Something like that. So that's one of the way. And actually, one of the things I can say, especially here in Africa according to the structure of our financial ecosystem and systems that we actually use, and which is actually why I think Mojaloop is helpful, is because they are very flexible to how actually our industries are built. For example, I really like the way it is built, that both the sender and the recipient needs really to agree on something before we actually even complete the transfer. But unfortunately, most of the industries here, including Rwandan, would really takes a lot of effort and a lot of time to adopt that structure according to how actually the systems are built. So, which means all these other systems, all this process would actually comes handy to those participants who works in such industries where there's actually not this agreement between payer and receive, I mean the sender and receiver, because it would really help, because as Paul mentioned, there are so many faults or mistakes in their systems. That's one. Second, sometimes people they send money, like a sender can send money, and then the money is deducted on his wallet, and then they say that okay, we have sent, and then the transaction falls somewhere there on the sender or the receiving party, and then we don't know where actually it has hung. And then that's actually also one of the sources of disputes. So we have so many sources. And of course, despite even that gap of our market and most of the markets here in Africa and others where they don't have actually set that infrastructure where the payer and the payee need to agree on terms. So I think this process, that's where it comes actually handy. But most of the times, if people have actually followed everything that Mojaloop has built, those are agreements and everything, I see it being used more on frauds, especially the return of money. I want my money back. Maybe the creditor was not, I mean, the creditor was not right. I mistyped the number or the account, something like that, and then I want my money back. They all go through a
Yeah,
dispute.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
mean, in that case, that can be an attempt at fraud. You know,
Yes.
they paid for release of goods, and now they just want their money back.
Yes. Yes. That's why it goes through, yeah, a
Yeah,
dispute, and then
yeah,
they have to check.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, Sam.
Thanks, Promise. I actually, the very interesting point raised by Paul about fundamental thinking around agreement, but I also bring up something. I don't know if this was discussed earlier, but I think in Mojaloop we also see the scheme and a hub as different entities. So a hub
Mhm.
operator will have the day-to-day responsibilities of running the software, the platform, setting up like configuration options, things like that, and helping onboarding. But a scheme manager is a different, I think, who looks after the whole scheme. That includes the DFS piece, the scheme rules, and the switch as well. So maybe there is a differentiation there as well in the second column when you say scheme manager and hub. I don't think we can use them interchangeably as well. The hub operator, at least in Mojaloop, is different from a scheme manager.
Yeah. I mean, a hub operator is essentially a technical role, and a scheme manager is a business role. So
Yeah, and
they can be the same entity, but there's no reason why they should.
sure, yeah, sure. I mean, an example could be where a software company is given a contract to run a switch, and they are the hub operator, whereas let's say there is a central bank or a regulatory authority who oversees or runs the scheme as a scheme manager. So I think that they have different responsibilities.
I think that's just a refinement that we need to reflect in these documents from
Yep.
us. Okay. Are there any other questions?
I'm just thinking about the discussion that we had. Maybe inside that decision process block, we need to be clear about the role that each of the participants are playing, or maybe we shouldn't decide and we leave it up to the scheme to decide.
I think I think you're right. I think it's the latter. I think the scheme has to decide.
Okay.
Yes.
So somewhere the decision needs to be made, but
Yeah.
how much of it is it between the DFSPs, and how much what role specifically that the scheme manager plays? I think it would be,
Can the scheme manager require that the DFSPs use this particular dispute management platform? Maybe there are two DFSPs who already have a relationship through other payment services, and they have a dispute management system that they use for that. They choose it for this.
well,
Just
how we've done it in Mojaloop previously is we offer the solution and allow people to choose how
Yeah.
much they want to use. So
yeah.
I think that's fair enough. It might be worth exploring that idea a little bit further, Promise, about just what maybe just writing up how schemes are organized, some where the scheme can make that decision, and some where that scheme just brokers that decision. And sometimes when the scheme doesn't actually get involved in the decision, but just says, when you decide that there's been a dispute that needs to be resolved, let me know and I'll resolve it for you.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, we can find a way that is also would also, I think, differ according to industries. For example, in Rwanda and other few countries that I know, they actually sometimes decide that the scheme manager can actually have only visibility on what's happening, and then be involved only when the issue has been escalated. But here we can also say, okay, let's remove that visibility and be on the other end, only know only the dispute that has been assigned to the scheme, of course, as escalation or something. But others that have not been assigned to the scheme manager, then they don't know about it. They don't even have clarity because, yes, what you say is true according to some countries, and the other thing they can say, okay, according to the law, only these two participants are part of the transaction, so they all should only be the one to have visibility on their exchange and everything, and only be involved when you are only needed. So that would also be another idea. Or we can even maybe find a way to set it as also to make it dynamic, so that if we go to sell, let's say if we take Mojaloop maybe to Asia, and they say, okay, we want visibility, so that we can be able to have it. If we say, okay, we don't want, then same with other different continents. So yeah, countries. Yeah, that's how I would think about it.
Okay. I'm glad somebody's talking about it. It's a very important part of the solution. So thanks for that.
I think we should document that if we can.
Yeah.
I think that's an important
Yes.
part of this work stream, to document that.
Like, yeah, especially this part of the scheme.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Promesse, we have
yes,
less
yes.
than 15 minutes left.
Yes,
What
yes.
else would you like to cover?
Yeah. The next steps that I'm really wanting to focus on is actually it's like now formally like creating epics and user stories that we can start with, and then doing that in parallel to finding and onboarding contributors. So my aim would be, if we had to find, I think if not mistaken, this PI will end somewhere in April, if not mistaken. So it would really be good if we reach that stage. It means in 2 months be having a team, contributors on this dispute management. When we have all documentation, contributors are set, and we have actually even started working on it. I think this phase will be probably be concluded and finalized in the next PI, but I would see it at least at the end of this at the end of this PI, being able to have documentation and also being able to have a team that has actually started, no matter how far they could be, but at least the development should be started by then. Yeah, that's actually what I think of the next steps. I will learn and engage on how to find contributors and things like that. But that's actually my main aim, to have this dispute development started at the end of this PI. Yes, Paul?
What's not been clear to me is it's very important to have a dispute process, but what's going to be the delivery of this work stream, or what do you think the delivery of that output's going to be? Is it going to be well, the reason why I say it like that is there are a lot of ticketing systems in the world, each with customizable process flow. Is this just an implementation of a ticketing system, or is this custom software? Or are we not talking about that at all? We're just talking about a set of documentation so people can configure their own ticketing system. You know, what do you think the output of this work stream should be?
The output of this work stream would be first to determine if you're going to use, because there was an idea that even as I might have a case management, even system, even Swift has a case management system. So the output of this work stream would be to choose according to what we have on the table. Are we actually customizing other ticket system, or are we building our own in Mojaloop that can also be customized by other people who are adopting, just like other modules on Mojaloop, how they have been built from most of them from scratch, and then they are also customizable according to the market, according to the industry that is adopting it. So for me, at the output of this work stream is to have, first of all, the documentation of how it should be on Mojaloop way, and then also to have a ticket system being integrated in the system, being it from scratch or customizing the existing one, but being in Mojaloop as part of Mojaloop, so that people who will be adopting Mojaloop can also have this dispute management or case management integrated in the open source package that they get. So that's how I would put it.
Okay. How I've done this sort of thing in the past is I run a spike, investigate a whole lot of different tools or possibilities, and then I run a little POC where I try out each one of these tools to see which ones are easier to use and which ones aren't. Maybe I sort of choose out of the list of 20 possible ones, I choose maybe 2 or 3 that I run a little POC on, and then make a decision, and then that becomes the tool that then gets incorporated. If a similar process would follow, how much of that do you think you could do in the work stream, or how much of it is going to be in the next work stream, as sort of after you've created these epics and stories? So epics and stories could be talking about trying to decide on a tool, or it could be on having chosen the tool, what needs to be done. And is that a fair question?
Yeah, that's a that's a very fair question. Yeah, in this work stream, for me, I would say this will also need to, of course, will also depend on how actually Mojaloop likes to do their things. because you can maybe find them okay saying maybe okay, we would like to have it actually built from scratch or something, and or I do the research of those tools. I think I can maybe have a chat with Paul, even other community members to see to see which one is good, and then if we can also give a chance other already built systems. I can create a ticket for myself. I go through different case management systems that I know, the one for Swift, for Tazama, and others, and see the one that actually can be customizable to actually achieve what we want to achieve, or to be like the structure that we want. And at the end of this work stream, I would really like to have that one, and also having a clear documentation of how we need it to be, like the structure, explaining every step, like in detail, all those things that we have started, the scheme manager, the agreements and everything, use cases, different things like that, explained very well. And then having now a clear image of what is going to be done in the next work stream. Are we building from scratch, starting from the next PI? Are we integrating the chosen system? That then would be the work for the next work stream. But this one would be more on, let's have a documentation of what we want, and let's choose if we are building ours or if we're integrating another system in this Mojaloop project. So that's how I see it as outputs of this one and also the next one, what we would do.
Great. I'm very interested in the output of this work stream premise, and it feels to me like it's going in the right direction. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And we very much welcome your input to this and your depth of expertise in this area in managing work streams is really helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so this is actually it. Maybe for as next actions, there's documentation of this, like a clear documentation using even the help of use cases that can be actually be handled and sorted by these disputes, and the whole flow have a clear documentation so that can be shared by the community, and then maybe working with the community members to see if we can build it from scratch. Maybe Paul will help me with that, to organize it, and then see if we can build it from scratch, or if we are actually integrating, we have some candidate tools, if I can say, that we have thought about it, Stazama, the Swift and others. And then we can see if at the end of this or at the end of this PI work stream in April, we can already have a clear documentation, and also the clear path of the next work stream. Are we building it from scratch or something like that? So I think that is the next action. And also, of course, finding contributors, but it will be fair for us to find contributors after having a clear path that we're going to take. If it's from scratch,
Yeah,
I think if
agree.
it's from scratch, it will be really important to know that. Yeah. So thank you very much. That is it for me.
Your timing is impeccable, Professor. There's 2 minutes left. So
yes,
thank you for that. We might have time for just one short question if anyone wants to ask anything now before we close. No? Okay, well, thank you everyone. Thank you for your questions, and Promesse, thank you for presenting today. I think that's been a really good session, and I hope you found it useful as well.
Yes.
So for now, I'll say thank you to everyone and see you next week, hopefully.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye now.
Thanks for